I'm going to make an executive decision. We are going to trade out this picture of James McCann for a more badass picture. I mean, come on. I can't just leave that one up there. This is the baddest human being I've ever seen in my life. Hi, good morning. It's Glenn Clark Radio. It's a Tuesday edition of the program. Boy, this would be so much more fun if the Orioles had not then turned around and lost the game afterwards. Like, what you got to deal with. Like, if we could just be talking about the ballad of James McCann today, who, as you probably know from this show and all the conversations we've had, go ahead, bring that music down a little bit. Yeah, there we go. When I start talking, you bring it down a little bit and then let it fade from there. James McCann, amongst his teammates, was already one of the most popular players on the team. Truly. I genuinely mean that. And every time people would complain about James McCann, I'd be like, yo, I get it. But, like, they love him. And some of that is the nature of the backup catcher. We've talked a lot about it. Like, the backup catcher is on top of being the backup catcher. He's, like, team dad, psychologist, all of those things. But, yo, that's badass. Hi, it's Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn. Grant's in for Griffin again today. It is trade deadline day. Up until 6 o'clock, we will find out if the Orioles are doing anything else.
Stay tuned.
Fortunately, the guy that a lot of us thought was most practical and most interesting was Eric Fetty, and he is not going to be a Baltimore Oriole. Eric Fetty goes to St. Louis instead as part of a 3-team trade, which you don't see a lot in baseball. That's a bummer because that always seemed like the one that could genuinely be a difference maker that you wouldn't have to break the bank for. And then maybe more problematic to the trade conversation is the price that the Astros paid for Yusei Kikuchi, which was really overwhelming. And that makes you worry about the price for a lot of the other people that are available at the deadline and whether or not they'll happen. Bob Nightingale reports this morning that the Giants are planning to keep Blake Snell and try to go for it in the playoffs. This despite the fact that they traded away Jorge Soler. So I believe you would call that mixed signals. John Heyman had reported that they are unwilling to pay down Blake Snell's deal. I don't know if that was part of it, is that teams thought that, like, you know, you want a better prospect, you pay some of the deal. If I'm the Orioles, I would say, no, I'm happy to pay the deal in order to give you a lesser prospect. That money should be whenever you have the opportunity for money to be the equalizer, and I know this is easy for me to say because it ain't my money, but whenever you have the opportunity for money to be the answer in a trade instead of better assets, I'm going to say go ahead with the money. But that's just me. Again, easier to say when it ain't your money. I don't know if you've heard, David Rubenstein's got some of that. There are other people that believe that the Giants might be trying to use the media to get that out there to try to keep driving the price of Blake Snell higher. There are some people that believe that, like, that doesn't really make sense. You just traded away Jorge Soler, and now you're going to go for it? Sure, guy. Sure. That sounds true. And those people genuinely believe that, like, really what the Giants are doing is trying to use that, get that out there to make someone pay more in order to get Blake Snell. We will see. But that has been a name that a lot of Orioles fans have focused on. Obviously, Tanner Scott is a name that's still out there. A potential reunion. Hey, Craig Kimbrell gave up another run last night.
Sure did.
Wasn't in a save situation, but happened. In fairness, seemed like everybody gave up a run last night.
He bailed them out of a safe situation.
Who?
Kimbrell.
Oh, they didn't have to play. I get it. We'll see. We'll see if the Orioles end up being in the mix for Tanner Scott, who would be a rental, and it's a little bit tricky and how much you're going to pay for that. Jack Flaherty is still out there. Tarek Skubal technically is still out there, but again, the momentum seems to be that he's not going to get dealt. Garrett Crochet is still out there. The momentum seems to be that he's not going to get dealt. We'll see. It's all I can say. We'll see. I would be stunned if the Orioles did nothing more. They have already made, obviously, 2 trades. And I say they made 2 trades. They made 1 acquisition, notably. That's what they've done. To say nothing of Sir Anthony Dominguez, who might at some point prove to be a notable acquisition, at the moment he's an arm. Another arm. And Christian Pache, with all due respect, is nothing. And I know he did hit a ball really hard yesterday, so God bless him for that. Turned it into an infield single because he's very fast. They've made 1 real acquisition addressing a significant area of need so far. Sir Anthony Dominguez might end up being that. Time will tell. But at the moment, he's just 1 more arm amongst a group of guys that we have no idea who's really legitimate and who isn't. Part of the reason why we think he's a notable acquisition is simply because we have no idea who's actually good in the bullpen. So anyone might be an upgrade. I would be stunned if they don't do anything. But how notable that proves to be determined. Some of the other right-handed outfield bats have come off the table as well over the course of the last 24 hours. There is now a number of reports that suggest that Luis Robert will not be traded by the Chicago White Sox. Okay. Lane Thomas went. Tommy Pham went. They had been tied to Frankie Montas as well. He's off the table.
Tommy Edman went in that same month.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. In the 3-team trade.
I was surprised to see that one.
So, yeah, like this is where you are. And we'll continue to monitor it like a junkie looking for a hit today. You guys got any of them trade rumors? You guys got any of them? That's what we'll be looking for. It's it's a what it is situation. The old is what it is. We will be watching and waiting like everybody else and analyzing everything. I would not have wanted to pay the equivalent of what the Blue Jays got for Yusei Kikuchi. I would not I try to think about what the equivalent of that would be, but it smells like it's at least, I mean, Luke Ruffino is a legitimate baseball player.
Yeah.
It might be a Kerstad, right? Like, it might have cost you a Kerstad to get Yusei Kikuchi.
You flipped a number 2 prospect for a 4.75 ERA. That's what's alarming.
And in fairness, the number 2 prospect in Houston is not the number 2 prospect in Baltimore.
No.
So it's not like Kobe Mayo is the number. Well, I guess maybe the prospect analysis folks probably say that Basayo is the number 2 prospect now. But we're splitting hairs. Basayo and Mayo are both above that. It's probably Kerstad or Kowser. I don't want to do that for Kikuchi. No way. I don't want to do that. So that makes it tricky because now is that what everybody thinks the cost is of pitching?
You have to give up that much.
Because like Chris Bassett's scheduled to start for the Blue Jays tonight, and like I would have been totally good with Chris Bassett starting for the Orioles tonight.
Yeah,
that would have been decent. Hey man, just you're here. Why don't you come on over to the other clubhouse? I mean, maybe you don't not tonight because Corbin Burns is going tonight. You don't really want to push back Corbin Burns, but you get the point. We can only say we'll see so many times. And then there's a lot of like consternation. What if they don't do anything else of significance? Well, you can't pretend like they didn't do anything of significance because they did acquire Zach Eflin. That did happen. They paid a reasonable price to get a helpful pitcher. And even if Zach Eflin wasn't great yesterday, and he wasn't, and that was one of the things in talking to Brian Anderson yesterday that concerned me a little bit, is that when you say, well, he just wins. No, he's okay winning a game 6-5. Yeah, he can be okay with that. I'm not, because I've met the Orioles bullpen. The win thing doesn't mean anything to me. God bless you if you've won games as a pitcher. It is a worthless stat. We're beyond that now. Maybe worthless is. It is a nearly worthless.
It's not as
stat.
relevant as it used to be.
It's not even that. It's borderline worthless. It is not an equation that teams use in evaluating a pitcher. Zach Eflin was bad yesterday. Flatly bad. Now, thankfully, in the first game, the Orioles scored a boatload of runs. And for what it's worth, his reputation, he doesn't walk anyone, he lived up to that. That was quite evident. He don't walk people. And that is not nothing. Like, that is a good thing. You like that about Zach Eflin. But to pretend like that's the... Dude, he gave up 10 hits over 6 innings. And if not for really high-level stuff from Colton Cowser in left field, it would have been worse than that. This is part of the reason why there were some people that were like, hey, I know we think he's an upgrade to Dean Kramer, and he's capable of being an upgrade to Dean Kramer, but he's not definitely an upgrade over Dean Kramer. 10 hits. Again, it's all over the place. 10 hits, no walks, 7 strikeouts. There's stuff in there that you can say, hey, I like that. But you can't say Zach Eflin was good yesterday just because the Orioles scored more runs than the Blue Jays did while he was in the game. It don't work that way. That's an untenable. That's a today we're okay with Zach Eflin. He does it again. When would he be lined up to pitch again? Saturday. He does it again Saturday, and the Orioles score 3 runs in that game, and we're noticing that Zach Eflin wasn't good. Now, again, I like the not walking people. That's a thing. I really like that. And I hope that Zach Eflin won't be giving up 10 hits per game.
Yeah.
I hope that's the case. But 10 base runners is 10 base runners, whether they're hits or walks. You can't put 10 guys on over 6 innings and just hope for the best.
You're playing with fire at that point.
And I get it. You can say, hey, Zach Eflin, that's part of his deal is he minimizes damage. And, yes, his ability to get strikeouts helps when there are runners on base. And we saw that a few times yesterday. Being someone who has command of the zone can very much help when you have runners on base. And I don't want it to come off like I'm saying Zach Eflin was disastrous. Cade Povich was disastrous. Zach Eflin wasn't disastrous. We just can't pretend like because that it was a good start. It wasn't. Cade Povich, isn't going to make another start in Baltimore. But as we said, the Suarez thing is significant. This is why they really desperately need to find another starter today. Desperately need to find one more. Because they can't confuse themselves into thinking that Cade Povich can be the answer this season. Just no way. No way. The struggles continue for Adley Rutschman, obviously. He did have some really hard hit balls. That was good. You love to see that. You think that that's a positive sign. It was one of the things that everybody clung to with Colton Cowser, and look how that's turned around. Like Colton Cowser, for as bad as it was still hitting the ball really hard. And now that's working out. Those are good things. Trying to think of what else mattered from the 2 games yesterday. Anthony Santander's at 30 home runs. That's crazy. You start to worry about what the price would be if you do want to try to give him a 3 to 4 year deal. He's going to end up with 40+ home runs this season. Like,
It's going up.
that price is going to be. I've always thought that you could do something like in the 3 years, $45 million
I
range.
think we're nearing 80 million, 90. Probably more than that.
I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, if it's 4 years, I'd still.
Yeah.
I think it's you're not getting 3 years. You're not doing. Anthony Santander is not getting 30 per season.
No.
But a 4 year, 75, something like that. Man, I don't know.
That sounds about right.
It's pricey. It's pricey,
Yeah.
man. God, you hate the thought of him leaving. Boy, you hate the thought of him leaving. And I get it. It's tough. If none of these other guys, like if Ryan Mountcastle doesn't depart today, he's still on your roster for next season. Ryan O'Hearn, like that. There's no clearing of the logjam of these guys. And I'm just not. I know Heston Kjerstad ended up playing left field last night. I'm just not comfortable with Heston Kjerstad in left field. I can't do the bit with Heston Kjerstad in left field. And I get it. That's tough because you want him to get at bats regularly because you want him to get adjusted. And, after a really good first week, the at bats have been a little dicey since then. Connor Norby's cold. Did have a big hit. Did have the double. That was nice to see. Real quick, a couple of you. Matt Torper, I wouldn't say Eflin was bad yesterday. He was mediocre. 9 of the 10 hits were singles. He had a quality start. The quality start thing, it's defined. We know what a tenable whip is in baseball. Like, we know what works as far as a whip is concerned. And we know that 10 base runners of any sort over 6 innings is not tenable. Again, you can say he did a nice job. And I do think that those things matter. I think that they are relevant. But if someone's pitching to a 1.67 whip over the course of a season, they're a bad pitcher. I don't. To your point, Matt, the fact that 9 of them were singles, yeah, I mean, that's true. But they weren't excuse me singles. These weren't, Baltimore chops or infield dribblers or anything like that. Like they were solid contact yesterday. And it'll be interesting to see, again, because there's value to somebody. He does have command of the zone, and as we talked about with Brian Anderson, it feels like that's been the trade-off. No walks, but there's going to be a little bit more contact. It will be interesting to see. He can't give up 10 hits over 6 innings. That cannot be the story of Zach Eflin for him to be a starter for you on a team that's to be a guy that's going to have to be counted on in the playoffs for a team that's trying to win a World Series. That can't be the answer. And again, it was fortunate that it was only 10 because Colton Cowser did some real yeoman's work in left field to prevent 2 more in 1 inning. It was bad teetering on disastrous. There are good things in there. There are things about Zach Eflin that I like and that I think are reason for optimism, but I can't pretend like it wasn't. It was a bad start.
Oh, one of those hits was a home run, too.
Yeah, and then, that one came a little bit late. Like, you can say, hey, maybe he was wearing down at that point, but at the same time,
it's still 1 of 10 hits.
Correct. And you're relying on Zach Eflin is here because you're expecting him to go 6 innings every time he pitches.
And he's lucky he only got 3 earned runs.
Correct.
To your point, he's lucky.
Correct. Again, I'm not. I don't want to pile on Zach Eflin. I don't want this to be like I'm down on the trade type of thing. I still think it was a good trade, and I think there are things to like about Zach Eflin, even in the one start that I think was bad. I think there were good things there that I can respond to. But, we're
antsy.
Well, and part of the problem being I can't count on the Orioles to score that many runs consistently. Right. That's part of the issue here. As far as the McCann thing goes, and yes, he was man of the match, and I swear I'll get it up. I want to print out a picture of him with his face busted open because that's the thing. Obviously it's badass, right? Like that, we can say that so many times. I think there are. I do have a small question about there not being an independent arbiter that maybe steps in at some point and says, dude, I get the situation you're in, but you can't have a guy whose eye is swollen shut playing in a Major League Baseball game.
And he's catching.
I know we don't really like the idea of, like, independent observers, but, like, we have to do that in football, for example, with concussion protocol. I am not trying to second-guess whether the Orioles went through all the protocols yesterday. I have no doubt that they did. I do not believe that the Orioles valued the game. And, in fact, as I said, talking about it with a buddy of mine as I was going to the gym during Game 1, as badly as James McCann wanted to stay in Game 1, they did have the option of flip-flopping, letting him go get cleaned up, and if the swelling could go down, then he could catch Game 2. They also have David Banuelos on the taxi squad. The idea being that if James McCann comes out of the first game, that means that Adley Rutschman has to catch both games of a doubleheader is not true. It's not. It adds to the lore of James McCann, but it's not true. Adley Rutschman could come into that game. They could activate David Banuelos for Game 2. Now, that would require them putting someone on the injured list, and that's more problematic. You would say that Major League Baseball should have a rule for these unique circumstances. Like in the NHL, they have what's called an e-bug for goalies. That, like, they don't ever want it to be that they have to put a different position player in a game as a goalie, because then you're talking about, like, there being real, like, a fallacy in competition. That's not legitimate. So what they have is some former college goalie, someone with some level of goalieing experience, that their job for that night, they have to sit in the press box at a hockey game, and if for some reason a team has two goalies get injured during the course of the game, that nobody comes in and plays goal. And there's some legendary stories about e-bugs over the years. I think somebody wrote a book about e-bugs recently, which I would be inclined to read it, because they're, otherwise, firefighters. They're guys that, like, work, they might be a high school or a college hockey coach or something like that, and they go in. I wonder if yesterday it was, like, the day that Major League Baseball's got to think doing something similar with catchers. Like, have every stadium have an emergency catcher on hand. And the answer yesterday for the Orioles would have been, you don't get to put the emergency catcher in just because James McCann's hurt. You have to put Adley Rutschman in. But it's just that thought that, like, maybe you should have some sort of other plan. It was a really unique circumstance with it being a doubleheader. Like, there's a lot going on there. James McCann obviously had fired up his team. That didn't help Cade Povich in Game 2. A dope moment, something that we won't forget about quickly. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. It just doesn't seem like it was a great idea to have a guy playing in a Major League Baseball game with an eye swollen shut, but, like, he got through it. They won the game. Adley was able to catch last night. We'll see today if they think that James McCann needs to go on the injured list, or if the swelling goes down and, they believe that if Adley's playing tonight and, he was just going to have a scheduled day off anyway, that he'll be okay. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. Crazy, man. Crazy.
Is the book you were thinking about Odd Man In, Stephen Wino?
Maybe. That might be it. Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, I would like to read that. It's crazy, the concept of e-bugs. Like, these are just dudes. They, like, work like they're a taxidermist during the day, and then, like, hey, man, you got to go to the arena tonight. And, like, there's like a 1 in 100 chance that you'll ever end up in an NHL game. It's probably not even that. I think, like, 2 e-bugs come in per season. Like, it's almost never that we see an e-bug actually have to come in and play, but they're just a dude, and now they get to say they were an NHL player. Like, and one came in and was good and won a game for like Carolina a couple years ago. It was wild, Jack. I don't know that baseball will get there, but I did have that thought as I was watching that yesterday. Maybe you have an emergency catcher. Grant can be the emergency catcher. He could just hang in.
I'm a free agent.
Yeah,
I'm a free agent here, fellas.
But maybe somebody with a little bit more professional experience. Maybe the rule is that you had to play at least the AA level, and then somebody lives in town that was, like, we were joking yesterday on Twitter that, like, well, it could be Rick Dempsey. Rick Dempsey's 74. It can't be Rick Dempsey. I love Rick Dempsey. It's not Rick Dempsey. But, like, whoever it is, somebody who has some amount of professional catching experience that happens to live in town is just, that's the guy. Like, hey, man, we pay $100. You come to the game, you watch it from the press box, and if for some reason something happens, you can race down and put some gear on, and you're in the game now.
Do you think they could pluck them from the indie leagues like that or something? Because you got
I don't
around.
Yeah, I don't know. Because those leagues exist for a reason. Like, guys want it. This is for somebody whose career is over, like, who knows they're not playing anymore. That's moved on with their life, but it's a very unique thing. It's a very unique thing. I was trying to think if there was anything else I needed to cover today. I don't know. It was a busy day yesterday, a lot going on, and then we'll see what happens today. Today's show is brought to you by the Stan the Fan Variety Hour. Speaking of which, Stan is back tonight. As if the weather holds up and the Orioles play, Stan, Ross, and Luke will be with you after the game. I believe 10:30 is the scheduled planned time, and I think I might be hopping on with them if that's the case. If the weather does not hold up, and the Orioles are rained out tonight, then they're going to jump on, I believe, in like 8 o'clock, I think is the timing for it, to react to whatever the Orioles may or may not do between now and the trade deadline. So that'll be live, facebook.com/PressBoxSports. You can check it out there. If you miss it live, you can watch it, youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or PressBoxOnline.com/video. When we come back in, our buddy Ken Weinman will check in with us. We'll get his thoughts on what the Orioles may do today. That's next. Glenn Clark Radio.
Escape to Ocean City, Maryland, and discover a place that just feels lighter, where every day feels like Saturday and French fries are a food group, where flip-flops are always in fashion and seafood is always in season, where the boardwalk is bustling and the beach is right outside your door, where you can rise with the tide and feel like a kid again. Ocean City, Maryland, somewhere to smile about. Book your trip at OCOcean.com.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Discover one of Baltimore's hidden gems at Guilford Hall Brewery. Enjoy dinner in our spacious brew pub, sip a signature cocktail in our outdoor dog-friendly beer garden, or take a tour of our brewery. Discover your new favorite local craft beer. From crisp lagers to hoppy ales, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Pair your brew with delicious appetizers and entrees. There are options for the whole family, but you have to try our fan-favorite giant pretzel. Guilford Hall Brewery, where every sip is a celebration. Visit us online at guilfordhall.com.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
Frederick Keys Baseball is back. With 30 more home games beginning on July 2nd, the Keys are excited to welcome you back to Nimio Field at Harry Grove Stadium. We want to see you there. Countless promotions will be on display every game, with it ranging from Tap House Tuesdays to Firework Fridays and everything in between. For more information or to buy tickets, call 301-815-9939. or visit frederickkeys.com today.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from driveeasymd.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. There, you just saved money with Easy Pass, all without slowing or receiving a notice in the mail. Well done, thrifty driver, well done. Get your Easy Pass at driveeasymd.com.
The Ed Block Courage Award Foundation has been working in partnership with the NFL for 46 years to support abused, neglected, and at-risk youth across the country, partnering each team with a children's facility or program that supports the well-being of those in need. Annually, one player from each team is selected by their peers to receive the Courage Award for their inspiration on and off the field. Learn more about how the Ed Block Courage Award Foundation makes a difference, and be sure to check out their latest podcast and web series episodes at edblock.org.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCR as we continue along on a Tuesday edition of the program ahead of the Orioles playing Game 3 against the Blue Jays tonight, and also, of course, the trade deadline coming up. That one might work. We're trying to get an appropriate picture of James McCann to put up on the wall. Yeah, the problem is I got to put stars on because it's the second time being. We'll figure it out.
Right.
But God bless him. God bless him. All right. Let's continue to talk about the Orioles and what they might do today. Checking in with us now, you, of course, know him from Inside Access every afternoon over on 105.7 The Fan. He's our buddy Ken Weinman, and he's with us now here on GCR. Ken, what's going on, brother? How are you?
Glenn, how you doing, dude?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm in this, really weird place where, I'm almost by the moment, how antsy I am. 2 days ago, I was like, dude, you better not trade for a single rental, right? You better not do it. Then they win a couple of games again, and you're like, right, this is baseball. That's the way that it goes. Go out, rent Tanner Scott, right? Do it. And then, then you see the price that, the Blue Jays were able to get for Kikuchi, and you're like, Jesus Christ. I'm not paying that for a pitcher. What are we doing? I am so up and down and up and down and up and down about what it is that needs to happen today. I think the Orioles need to do something, but the idea of am I going to be angry if they don't? I don't know where I am with that at this point.
I don't know if anger is the word for me. I'll be disappointed if they don't do something because let's start with the bullpen and Tanner Scott. I think Craig Kimbrell thinks that Craig Kimbrell is shot.
Yeah.
So, they need somebody, whether it's Fairbanks or Scott. There's a third closer available who's escaping my mind at the moment. But, somebody with closer experience, they need to go get because it can't be Craig Kimbrell, and they really don't have another answer right now. As far as the starter's concerned, I do think they need to go get another starter, though. I really like the Zach Eflin move, and it makes them better. And anything that makes Dean Kramer your fourth starter in a potential postseason series works for me. But I'd be checking in on Blake's now. And you talk about the price for Kikuchi. The White Sox they're not only bad, they're incompetent. The White Sox got less for three guys than it seems like the Blue Jays got for Kikuchi. I'd be calling the White Sox about Crochet, though. He scares me because of the innings.
Right. Yeah, I've never thought that Crochet was the right. I love Crochet moving forward, but this is what it comes back to. Are you doing what you're doing based on trying to win a World Series this year, or are you doing what you're doing based on trying to keep the club good for a couple of years? And that's the part, I'm with you. Craig Kimbrell can't be this team's closer. But if you rent Tanner Scott, are you confident that what you're doing can be the difference in this team being ready to win a World Series? And that's the part that I'm wavering on now. I'm wavering on I know they've got Corbin Burns for this year, and so this year is supposed to matter, but I am struggling with how much I believe they are a piece or two away from being a world. It just sort of seems like they are still a bit young among that core of position players and maybe not quite ready to be a World Series winner, even offensively, if you address the pitching problems.
That's fair. I also will say that you look at last year's playoffs, and now with the extra rounds, it's become a crapshoot. And like no team that won 100 games a year ago won a playoff series. The 2 World Series teams were teams that got in the last week of the regular season and then got hot in the playoffs. And I don't think anybody expected Arizona or Texas to be in the World Series when the playoffs began. So it is a bit of a crapshoot. They're playing bad baseball right now. There's no way around that. But they have a lot of time to get on track. And I do think, does Tanner Scott guarantee you a World Series? No, nothing really does. But he gives you a better shot than if you say, okay, I'm just going to be stubborn and Craig Kimbrell's my closer going into the playoffs, because he cost the Phillies a chance at the World Series a year ago. So riding that, I think is a colossal mistake. But if you go get a Tanner Scott, here's an interesting idea. You get Crochet and you make him the closer for the rest of the year. He's in your rotation last year.
So how much do you buy into what Crochet's team is saying about him not pitching in the playoffs or not going to the bullpen unless he gets a contract extension?
That's asinine. Now, granted, if that's something that he's not budging off of, then I don't trade for him.
Right.
But
you can't.
Yeah, you can't. I frankly find that fascinating that a guy that really has done nothing until this year is now with no leverage going to stand there like that. If that's the case, then you go sit on that team that's 53 games under 500 and enjoy yourself, because that's just I'm not giving him any money.
Oh, I agree. I've just never thought that. I think it's interesting, the idea of Crochet, like he could help you in the bullpen this year and then be your ace moving forward when Corbin Burns is gone.
Sure.
That's interesting to me. But my God, that comes at a price, like a real price for Garrett Crochet to do that when he's not going to be able to help you in the rotation. I don't know. It's tough for me.
Glenn, here's the other part of it. How long are they going to hoard all their guys? And what I mean, like they have too many dudes. Like, and at some point you got to make a trade that's going to sting a little bit, because a win-win trade at that level is going to sting a little bit. And if they're as good as they think they are at identifying bats, then you'll just go get more. It's just, to me, this hoarding, and then there's this part of it where they're too good to trade, but they're also too good to be here, which is kind of fascinating to me. Like at some point you gotta move. Like Dylan Beaver should be at AAA, but he can't because they got too many guys at AAA. Like there's Kobe Mayo should be in the majors, but he's still in AAA. Jackson Holiday, I guess he should still be here, or he should have been back by now. Now I know he had the injury issue, but he's still in the minors. Like you can identify. By the way, as a completely as an aside, why haven't they signed their first round pick yet? But that's just me.
I haven't really thought about that, to be honest with you.
But isn't the deadline like tomorrow?
Is it? I haven't. By the way, I've done.
I think it's either July 31st or August 1st to sign your draft pick.
Is it? I haven't even spent a second on it. I'd be really surprised. I'm sure that Vance Honeycutt, because he was talented once, like over Slot or whatever. But I'd be so stunned if that doesn't happen. Like I would be so surprised if that were the case. It just seems more like, that's interesting that it took a little bit in order to get here. Ken Weinman is with us here on GCR. I'm to some extent. By the way, apparently it's 5 p.m. Thursday, according to Grant, is the deadline for signing draft picks.
So that's 2 days. Yeah.
I'm to some extent. I do agree with you that like they can't hold on to these guys forever. At the same time, that doesn't mean that I think that they should make trades that aren't for value, and that's the tricky part about having this conversation.
Yeah. I'm not saying giving away, yeah.
Right. Like I am really stung by not knowing what the cost is of doing something. And like the guy that I think a lot of us were enamored with was Eric Fetty. Like that was the right guy, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't cost you everything.
And they got nothing for him.
And they got essentially nothing for him. And so that's the one where I'm like, what the hell? Like what?
Yeah.
That was the.
And they traded Pham and Kopech too, and got nothing.
Well, I wasn't as Kopech was more like throw him in if you're making a deal. I never really was all that, but I get it. You don't. We're in a world.
100 mile an hour arm.
I get it, and we're in a world where we're pretending like Sir Anthony Dominguez is a giant upgrade because that's just how bleak the picture appears to be for where the Orioles are in the bullpen. It's just that I was never particularly enamored with Kopech. I don't know, man. I'm in a weird spot. I think they're going to do something. I'd be surprised if they didn't. If they don't, I'm not going to lose my mind about it because we can't pretend like they did.
My co-host will.
Well, yeah, I've heard a few things about that. So I've heard. So I've heard. I don't know what to. I don't really want to. I'll leave that alone.
Yes.
God bless them. But I'm not going to lose my mind about it. I just think that it is hard pressed for me to envision that even with Zach Eflin, who again, who I do think to your point is an upgrade, but like he gave up 10 hits yesterday, and it was a miracle it wasn't more than that because Colton Cowser had to do yeoman's work. If Heston Kjerstad played left field in the first game yesterday, he gave up at least 12 hits in that game.
Yeah, well, and it should be 9 or 11 because for the life of me, I don't know how that wasn't an error on that ball that hit Gunnar Henderson in the chest.
Yeah, there was that.
But yes, you're right. Your prevailing point is correct. But that's who he is. He doesn't want anybody. He's a pitch to contact guy. He did strike out 7. I think he was a little amped up. That's not usually what you see, but his whip's always good, and he keeps you in the game. And let's face it, that's better than Dean Kramer.
Yes, it's a lower bar, but yes, and they need somebody to be in the rotation next season as well. Like they had one pitcher slated to be in the rotation next year at this point. So now they have 2, and that's a start. Like we can say that's better than having nothing. What if it's Flaherty?
Nah. So I was told by somebody I trust that they were in on him, and my reaction was that, it's the whole fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Like, you can't give up 2 trade packages for the same dude in back-to-back years. I know he's been good this year. I can't go down that road again with him. And I know he's been better this year, and they're saying he's healthy, and he wasn't healthy a year ago, but I can't do that.
Yeah, I've been inclined.
Give me something else.
I've been inclined to agree. Again, is it better than nothing? Probably.
I guess. Yeah.
Probably.
Hey, he's probably got a uniform ready for him in the clubhouse.
True, right? They wouldn't have to go off that far out of their way in order to grab it.
No Photoshop on the social.
I'm right. The first look at Jack. Here, I got the first look at Jack Flaherty in an Orioles uniform. This is what it might look like if Jack Flaherty were in an Orioles uniform.
Yes.
I keep coming back. I feel like I'm hemming and hawing because I am. I'm hemming and hawing over this because I have struggled with it from moment one.
Let me ask you this, Glenn. What would Dave Dombrowski do?
He would boy, that's a great question, Ken.
He would say F those prospects and go get what he needs.
Well, you say that.
That's what he does.
Except for he's not really doing that right now, right? Like,
well, he did. Well, he traded a lot for Carlos Estevez.
Yeah, that's true. He did. That's a good point. I did like Estevez. Oh man.
Yes.
All right. I'm in a little bit of a different place than that until I know that the Orioles are willing to spend the money to make up for what's lost. And that's the part of this that I'm still, I know you guys talked to David Rubenstein. I've had a private conversation.
Yes, he's a lawyer. He won't say anything.
And that's the thing. Like, without knowing what they're going to do, and yes, it'll be on us to call them out if he's not interested in spending the money, which is bizarre. Like, why buy a baseball team at 74 if you're not going to do that? But until I know that he's willing to pay the money to replace what's necessary if you make these bold trades, then it is icky for me a little bit. Like, even the conversation about Tarek Skubal, who I'm 100% in on, the idea of paying that level of price is wild to me because you're going to need another impact bat moving forward. That's one of the things.
Yeah, and you need a veteran bat.
I agree with that, but even if it's not that, I would say in the world where you have Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman for sure moving forward. The other parts, we think Colton Cowser has earned his right to be a part of this. We think Jordan Westberg's earned his right to be a part of this. But those aren't. Jordan Westburg is a B.J. Surhoff type of bat to me. Like, he's a
I
good
completely
bat.
agree.
He's not.
Completely agree.
They need another impact bat. We believe Jackson Holliday is capable of being that guy. We believe Kobe Mayo might be capable of being that guy. Right?
Well, that's the interesting one because he's right-handed. All the other guys are
Kobe Mayo because he's right-handed. I've said a million times. Like, to me, I don't want to say he's more untouchable than Holliday, but it's borderline, right? Because you don't have it otherwise. You have to have Kobe Mayo. But to the point, if you're trading those types of prospects away to try to go get a Skubal, are you confident that they're willing to spend the money to go get the replacement impact bat this offseason? And I'd like to hope so, but I don't know that yet.
But didn't the Eflin deal to me, I feel like gave us a little insight into that. Because John Angelos wasn't taking on $18 million next year. Like, if John Angelos was still the owner of this club, they're not making that trade because he's not taking on that contract.
I agree with that, but do you $18 million is still $18 million, right, in baseball? Like, there's a big difference between $18 million in one season. If that's what they're going to be, is we'll make the 1 year, we'll continue to sign the third tier of free agents, the guys that are still there come February. Like, I don't know. You can. It's not impossible to find that type of guy that can be helpful, like J.D. Martinez a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I was begging for J.D. Martinez.
I know. And I like J.D. Martinez, too, for what it's worth. It's not
a veteran bat that's been in the playoffs before and right-handed.
Yeah, once upon a time it was Nelson Cruz, right? Like, you can find those types of guys, but are you willing to spend, if it costs you, 4 years and $70 million to keep Anthony Santander around, are they willing to do that? Because I am.
Will it though? Like, Jorge Soler didn't get that.
What did Soler get?
I think it was like 3 years.
See,
I want to say 3 years, $42 million.
I've always thought $345 was about the right price for Santander, but if we get to the point where he ends up finishing this season with 42 home runs, I'm just not sure what that means for his value, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I do think they're going to spend more. What does that mean?
It was $342 by the way for Soler.
What's that?
It was $342.
Yeah, wow, I got it on the nose. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think they're going to spend more. I do think they're going to extend guys. I think that it makes sense, and they probably extend Adley pretty quickly because he's not a Boros guy, though. Adley, man, at least he hit a couple balls hard last night. His July has been putrid.
Yep, he's been awful. There's no doubt. And again, how much of that is that we're going to have to live in a world moving forward where he is only a part-time catcher, where he is a 50, like in the Samuel Basayo era, if that begins, like it's a 50-50 split, a timeshare between the two of them. I don't know, but it has been.
But he's 26 years old, man. Like he's got to catch and hit. Like this isn't like Carlton Fisk at 38, where you're like trying to figure out ways to keep his bat in the lineup. This is a 1-1. This is a guy that's got to hit and catch.
I know. All those things are true. I know they're true.
And Sam Basayo, there's another guy. So let's say this. Let's live in a fantasy world. I know you're the host here and I'm the guest, but let me throw this out at you. We wake up tomorrow and the Orioles have traded Jackson Holliday for Tarek Skubal. How are you feeling?
I am apprehensive, but it's giddy up. Like that. I mean, that's the thing that I said this as we've been talking about it the last couple of weeks. If whatever they do that's aggressive in pursuit of a World Series, I'm going to say, let's go. Like, that's going to be my answer back, is anything you're doing to win. You can't get me to be excited about the Austin Hayes trade. That doesn't mean I'm opposed to the Austin Hayes trade. And it's like there's this nuance here that, again, Twitter can't handle. I'm not opposed to what they did with Austin Hayes, but you can't get me to pretend like it's exciting. That I had people that were like, it's a low risk, high reward. There is no high reward here. None.
No, they improved the margins of their bullpen is what they did, and they traded a fourth outfielder who can't hit for power anymore. They're like, it's not sexy.
It's fine. I'm not opposed to it, but I can't pretend like it's some exciting trade. It's not.
Sure.
It's a trade that you make. But that's what it is. I'm mildly excited by the Zach Eflin trade because, again, to your point, the bar was low. They needed an upgrade. Zach Eflin in moments has looked like he's a really good pitcher. But even like at the median, he's a solid, qualified major league pitcher, and you needed those guys. You paid a real price, but not an overwhelming price. I can live with that.
Correct.
If they make that move, it will be very exciting for a team trying to win a World Series. Well, in the back of my mind, I'm going to have questions. There's going to be things I want to know. But I will always default to, if you're aggressive and trying to win a World Series, I'm going to choose to be on board, and I'm going to say, let's go, giddy up.
Here's the other side of it. Like, how are you feeling, or how would you feel if you've been a Padres fan the last few years and your front office has gone for it, over the top gone for it, and yet have not even played in a World Series?
Yeah, I mean, it's empty, but I also know I have Padres fans in my life, believe it or not. It's a very weird thing. Some of them were in town this weekend. Like, they would say the Padres were so irrelevant for the years leading up to that, like, they're still they've had it's mattered. They've had joy in their lives going to baseball games that matter, beating the Dodgers in the playoffs. Like, the way this city treats the Delman Young game, like, which is a little depressing. Not because we were all there, we all felt the electricity. It was awesome. But it's a bit depressing that there's a generation of baseball fans whose greatest moment of their lives was Game 2 of a division series. That's a bit depressing when you really think about it that way. But to be fair, it's what you have. And for Padres fans, like, of a generation, it's what they have. They don't. There's a generation that doesn't have. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I give them credit though, because the Padres could sit on their hands now and do nothing, and they're still relevant because they're the only game in town.
Right.
Like, there's no Chargers anymore. Right. There's no basketball. Right. There's no hockey. So they're by process of elimination, being the only game in town, they are now relevant. Right. And so I kind of give them credit for going for it, even though they probably don't have to. Plus, they have that new beautiful stadium, though it's not brand new anymore. But no, to your point, I agree with it. I'm old, so I was at Game 2 of the '83 World Series. I went to as an 8-year-old or 7-year-old, I guess. I went to all 4 home games of the '79 World Series with my dad. But yeah, to be a generation where all you got is Delman Young is pretty sad.
That's the point. And so, like, I'm all for, like, if any answer that's we're trying to win a World Series, I'm gonna ultimately say, even if I think you paid too much, okay. But the difficult part being, I quantify that for, I don't know still how I feel about rentals. Scooble is unique because he helps you now and moving forward. Like, that's
so does Crochet.
I don't know how much he helps you now, Ken, and that's what makes it tough. All right, I got it. I love you. You're on 2 to 6, obviously, take everybody up to the deadline.
We're not doing documentary talk?
Oh, what do you – oh, well, you know what? I want to watch the boy band one. I want to do that.
Oh, I haven't watched that yet.
I want to watch. It's on Netflix. There's like I think it's Dirty Pop or something.
I saw
what it's
it.
Called.
Yeah,
I want to watch that one. I don't even remember. I think it was the Nickelodeon one. Was the one we were supposed to.
It
do
was.
Last.
It was.
And Tim who I love, and I talked to him a little bit this week. Appreciate him sharing his story. Tim still has to make us snacks and all that. I think Rita and I are moving back to Wednesdays in the fall is the plan. So maybe there'll be a few more of those afternoon games or something like that for us to get back to. I miss book club. Book club was fun. I like doing book club.
Yes.
I want to do it, and I want to do the Dirty Pop. So even if it's just you and I need to watch the Dirty Pop so we can talk about it, all right?
I'll watch it.
Right,
I'll watch it.
We'll hear you this afternoon. Love you, buddy. Thank you for doing this.
See you. Thanks.
Ken Weinman with us here on GCR, of course, from Inside Access over on 105.7 The Fan. Everything, that's like therapy for me. I've told you guys for weeks, I don't know. I can't make a definitive statement. I can't. I don't have a hot take for you. It's tough. There isn't an obvious thing to say. I want them to do more than they've done. I get that it's difficult because the Fetty one is the one that I look at and say, I think you could have done that. I think that you could have made the equivalent of that trade. And I would have been on board with that. They might say, well, we were shooting higher than that. We thought we could do better than Fetty. Okay, well, let's see if you do. I don't know who that would be, short of Scooble at this point. I guess Tyler Anderson's still out there. I don't know how much you think he's better than Fetty. I mean, I don't know where the Blue Jays are after they dealt Kikuchi. Like, they dealt Kikuchi and Turner. Is everybody available, or is it just rentals? Like, again, the Chris Bassett question is one that's very interesting to me. But they might say, dude, we think we're going to contend again next year. We weren't trading Guerrero. Like, we're intending to go for it next year. So we're not trading Bassett. And I don't know what the prices are for these things. I mean, again, now I don't know that you want to trade with the Blue Jays. Now that they're getting king's ransoms for bit parts. Not bit parts, but rental parts that are struggling. Come back in. We'll take a brief detour from the Orioles. We'll talk some Ravens. Steve Wyche from NFL Network was in Owings Mills yesterday at Ravens training camp. We'll get his thoughts on what it is that he saw out there. Today's show brought to you by the print issue of Press Box. That's Governor Wes Moore on the cover. We had a sports conversation with the governor a couple weeks back. It's still available for a couple of weeks over at your neighborhood Royal Farm, any of the hundreds of Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you find Press Box. Read it all at PressBoxOnline.com. Steve Wyche, NFL Network next, Glenn Clark Radio.
Frederick Keys baseball is back. With 30 more home games beginning on July 2nd, the Keys are excited to welcome you back to Nimio Field at Harry Grove Stadium. We want to see you there. Countless promotions will be on display every game, with it ranging from Tap House Tuesdays to Firework Fridays and everything in between. For more information or to buy tickets, call 301-815-9939 or visit frederickkeys.com today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. Learn more at DriveEasyMD.com.
Hagerstown, Maryland, a snapshot of American history that dates back centuries. Today, the roots of the city expand with another historical moment, the grand opening of Meredith Park, Hagerstown's new event stadium and home to the Atlantic League Flying Boxcars. Experience the energy, culture, and adventure. Plan your getaway today at America's newest and most innovative ballpark. You're welcome in Hagerstown, Maryland. Visit Hagerstown.com.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their legendary fat, delicious, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. It's crab season, so sit back and crack some crabs while watching the Birds pursue another divisional title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday night, the Costas Inn offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with two sides for under $30. So head on down to the Costas Inn today at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
There he is, Agent 00 Chicken. Nothing can keep him from Royal Farms Chicken Palooza. Because right now, he can get a 3-piece world-famous chicken box for just $8, with a portion of each sale donated to a local charity. Plus, register to win world-famous chicken for a year. Come to Royal Farms Chicken Palooza. It's a real thriller, but it's only for a limited time. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Escape to Ocean City, Maryland, and discover a place that just feels lighter, where every day feels like Saturday and French fries are a food group, where flip-flops are always in fashion and seafood is always in season. Where the boardwalk is bustling and the beach is right outside your door. Where you can rise with the tide and feel like a kid again. Ocean City, Maryland, somewhere to smile about. Book your trip at OCOcean.com.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
All right, back in here on GCRs and continue along here in hour number 2 of the program. We'll take a slight detour from baseball today as we continue to await the trade deadline at 6. The Ravens continued training camp, and our next guest was out in Owings Mills getting his look at the Baltimore Ravens yesterday. He is NFL Network's chief national reporter, and you can watch NFL Network's Inside Training Camp coverage as it airs daily through August 7th. At noon Eastern, he is our friend Steve Wyche, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Steve, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you as always. Thank you for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Steve, a few things, right? One, and I start with, I feel like this is a weird time to be talking Ravens, and every conversation I've had is the answers that we really want about this football team we can't really get until January, right? Like, the big picture stuff for this team is, can they get past the Chiefs? Can they finally get over the hump? Well, there's almost nothing that we can see in August that's going to tell us whether or not that's the case. It feels like we have every right to believe the Ravens are a good football team. They'll be right back there in the mix. I know there are some small things that we'll talk about, but it just feels like the big picture for the story really is the Ravens are good. We know they're good. If they stay healthy, they'll probably be good. The question will be, what do they do come January?
Well, that's the spoils of being spoiled. Yeah. That's what, continued success, brings those types of expectations, but I wouldn't even call them expectations. That's the standard. And, I would agree with you. The Ravens are going to be, when you talk about the best teams in the NFL, yeah, we're going to talk about the Chiefs. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Niners, because the Ravens are assumed. It's okay, they're going to be part of it. They're not going anywhere. They're the Ravens. That's just who they are. So you're absolutely right in saying it all comes down to what they do in the postseason.
So knowing we can't get those answers until we get those answers, yes. Steve, what are the most interesting storylines for you about what we will be able to learn about this team, both throughout the preseason and obviously in the early portion of the season, starting with that Thursday night game in Kansas City?
Well, I don't want to state the obvious. But I think the main thing is, they've got to figure out what they're going to do with the offensive line and how they're going to incorporate Derrick Henry. Because we've seen, the Ravens the past couple of years been a running back by committee. It's worked, especially with Lamar. But now you've got a dude where you can put a fourth quarter on his back and just give it to him 10 times and not worry about how anything else shakes out, because he's going to win that game for you. He's going to close it for you. So I want to see how that works out, especially with defenses having to stay disciplined because of the threat of Lamar. And then also, you got both guard positions, that right tackle position have to be fortified. This is a big deal. Now, the Ravens do a great job of drafting, developing, and establishing really solid offensive linemen. When you look at just in their division, the defensive lines and defensive fronts they've got to play against, if Derrick Henry is going to be what you want him to be, those additions to the offensive line, one, not only have to be good, but they've also got to play on a thread. And that's the key to a successful running game, is everybody working in the same function. That's why the Niners run game works the same way and things like that. So those are the immediate and the short-term things that have to be fixed. But otherwise, the Ravens, like we said earlier, they should be there when it comes money time.
So let me pose that question about Derrick Henry. Again, we can't know this at this point. Do you think it's possible that if some of these other things, end up working out, if the offensive line with all the moving parts ends up working out, if the defense can be, similar in the transition from Mike McDonald to Zach Orr, if everything else is largely neutral, can Derrick Henry, as we acknowledge the problem, I don't think was specifically the backs as much it was the game plan in the AFC title game.
Right.
But can the presence of Derrick Henry, if he is at least somewhat close to being Derrick Henry at this point, be the difference for the Ravens to be able to get past the Chiefs and get to the Super Bowl in the AFC?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's two-pronged, right? Because think about this. For however many years, let's just say the past 5 years, everybody knew what the Tennessee Titans were going to do and who they were going to give the ball. it was going to Derrick Henry, and they couldn't stop him. Now, they had a very good offensive line there for years with Taylor Lewan and guys like that, right? But he was the guy, and they couldn't stop him. And at end of games, as the Ravens know, you're going to ask Earl Thomas, he could finish. But the other thing is, now with this expanded passing game, when you've got teams trying to load up to stop Derrick Henry, now Lamar can hit Zay Flowers. Now he can do some things to Mark Andrews to even open up the passing game more. So this is where it gets to playing, a little bit more intense chess, because having certain personnel packages in the game at certain times of the game or certain downs and distances can let you know if you're going to check into a run because you're playing a too high safety look or something like that, or if you're going to maybe do a run action or something with Derrick Henry and let Lamar boot out and either keep it or throw it downfield. So this is where I think having just the presence of Derrick Henry changes some things for the Ravens offense.
He is Steve Wyche, NFL Network. He is with us here on GCR. Steve, is it, I put out those other things and say that, I think they're capable of being neutral. I have acknowledged a few times this offseason the sheer idea of replacing 60% of your starting offensive line, and to be fair, notably Kevin Zeitler, who was a stud, a rock star for this team for the last few seasons, I don't think that we can be dismissive of the impact of that. And yet every time I seem to ask someone around the league, inside, outside, whether it's a media person or just talking to somebody within an organization, I always get back a very similar response, which is, yeah, but it's the Ravens, right? This is what they do. They draft, they develop. We believe that the guys they put out there, they're going to be ready to go. Is it reasonable to expect that even a huge task, 60% of your starting offensive line, that this franchise is just so capable of replacing it that we shouldn't be all that concerned?
Yeah, it's very conceivable and believable. I mean, they've shown it. They've done it before. I mean, you lose a Marshall Yanda, somebody comes in and plays. So, look, there's organizations that just do that. You just see, look on the defensive side of the ball, how many great players, especially on the interior, who've left, and you just next man up. You're seeing that, Trenton Simpson, Patrick Queen's a big blow. Trenton Simpson was the guy who everybody was talking about to me. He's going to step right in there next to Roquan Smith and be a stud. We've seen this. So, yes, you're replacing 60% of your offensive line, and it may take a moment, like I said, for them to play on a thread. That is a hard thing to do because a lot of guys are very good individually, but offensive line success is based on how those five guys work together. So that might be, that might be something that takes a while once they settle in on what they're going to do with the rotation. But I mean, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, this is a problem unless it becomes a problem. I'm going to assume, because the Ravens have done this so many times, that they are going to find a way to make it very fine and do it in pretty short order.
So let me ask it this way. Should they be the favorites considered the favorites to win the AFC North this season?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that's until they show they're not. Yeah, the Bengals with Joe Burrow coming back, they're going to be tough. The Browns with Deshaun, they're going to be tough. It's why it's the best top-to-bottom division in the NFL. The Steelers, we know defensively are going to be tough. We don't know if they're going to be able to score.
Right.
They're hoping to, depending on their quarterbacks. But, until someone proves otherwise, Baltimore is the king.
I feel like, and I maybe it's unfair because a lot of this comes from the talking head shows and the people that are just bloviating for the sake of bloviating, Steve, and that's not you and that's not I. But all of the hullabaloo that was made, we heard Lamar Jackson yesterday, hey, man, I appreciate, I don't think I'm the greatest of all time, but I want that to be out there. I couldn't believe how much reaction there was to John Harbaugh's comments just because, what is a team supposed to – if Gerard Mayo didn't want Drake May to be the greatest quarterback of all time, I think that would be insane, right? Why – what did you make of how much response there was to that and why – there is still such a polarizing why does Lamar Jackson continue to be such a national boogeyman topic that hey, if we say Lamar Jackson, we can get wild opinions? What is that? Why does that still exist in 2024 with a two-time MVP of the league?
Well, I mean, look, a lot of times a lot of these talk shows are just, a lot of the conversation is just there because to be contrarian, right? I mean, we see it. We know a lot of the stuff isn't sincere. We know a lot of the stuff isn't being discussed by people who really know what's going on. But to get to the earlier point, like I was in a production meeting a couple of years ago before a game with John Harbaugh when he was talking about Lamar. It was when he was hurt. It was the end of the season. I think his knee he couldn't come back on the field. There was all this controversy. Should he come back? Should he push it? And John was like, and you know, John, when he drops into sincere mode, guy, it is like coming from the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, there is nothing that would mean more to me for Lamar to win the Super Bowl, to be one of the greatest players ever, so people can see a guy who was raised the way he was raised and who carries himself as professionally, but as human, as the way he does, be that guy. He's like, it's like a personal connection him and Harbaugh have where it just, there's something there that, where Harbaugh just wants him to be accepted as being a great, great player, looking the way he does, playing the way he does, because it'd be different. And again, Glenn, you've been around John Harbaugh. When he gets into that mode, and you know how much it means to him. And I think when he said that recently, he was back into that mode. And the people who've seen that before understand it. So it's the reaction, whatever it may be, those are just folks who just don't understand that relationship. They don't understand John Harbaugh, and maybe they don't understand Lamar Jackson.
I think it's all fair, and I appreciate all of that. It's just it's weird. No one who's ever won 2 MVPs has not gotten into the Hall of Fame or will not be in the Hall of Fame. And I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson has clinched the Hall of Fame yet, but my God, that's the track that he's on. That's the way we talk about him. And yet we the conversation still being, I get it. I think he wants to win a Super Bowl and all of those. But to think there's anything at this point that separates Lamar Jackson from whether or not he's one of the great players of an era, it's bizarro to me. That question has been answered. He's one of the greatest players of an era. So was Dan Marino, and he never won a Super Bowl. And Lamar Jackson, I think, still has lots of – he's still younger than Joe Burrow.
Right.
And yet we don't talk about Joe Burrow that way. Like, nobody has he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, so it's like a failure. Lamar Jackson's younger than Joe Burrow. And so I think there's lots of time. But I just don't there's no world in which there's some debate about the quality of Lamar Jackson anymore. He's one of the greatest players of an era of football. End of story. Now it's the next question. Will he end up being a Super Bowl champion?
Look.
There's no question.
I'm
sorry,
one is,
Steve.
unanswerable. Right. That was unanswerable.
Yeah.
But, here's when you talk about the impact, right, of Lamar Jackson. Look at how coaching has changed.
Yeah.
Because of players like him. Look at the top of the draft. Dual threat quarterback is now part of the NFL vernacular, right? He's not the first. There were the Randall Cunninghams. There were the Steve Youngs. There were guys like that. He's not the first, but he's probably been the most electric, right? Michael Vick, you can make that argument, but he's probably been the most electric. And the way things shape around him. Now teams are building their rosters and their coaching staffs and how they call games around players like him because of the impact that he has. So when you're talking about all of the great things that Lamar Jackson has done, keep that in mind is how the whole, so much of the NFL has shifted because of him and players like him.
Steve, I know you're headed out to Canton this week, correct?
I am.
You're not are you a voter, Steve? I'm sorry. I don't know.
Not a selector.
You're not a voter.
No,
okay.
I am.
Right.
I am not.
Okay.
No, I'm not.
I ask you this question then. What's your so next year is a very relevant year again in Baltimore because both Terrell Suggs and Marshall Yanda are on the ballot for the first time. I think both of those guys are Hall of Famers, but I don't know. Like we're so used to in Baltimore, Steve. You'll understand that it's been 3 up, 3 down as first ballot Hall of Famers in Jonathan Ogden, Ray Lewis, and Ed Reed. These are the first times that somebody comes in that I'm not sure if those are going to. I think they're both worthy of that, but it's so hard with the Football Hall of Fame. What does your gut tell you about Suggs and Yanda as Hall of Famers or first ballot Hall of Famers?
Yeah, and so I'm very involved with the Hall of Fame. I'm our Hall of Fame guy at the NFL Network. I'm just deeply entrenched I don't have in front of me the other people going in the class.
So I know
I can sit here and
like Eli and Luke Kuechly are the two big names for next year. Marshawn Lynch, Joe Staley are also in that group. That's probably the top of the group.
Yeah. Okay. So Luke Kuechly, to me,
Yeah.
out of all the names mentioned, is the first ballot guy.
Right.
And so we'll see about the discussion with the others, with Suggs and Yanda. Look, they played positions where guys traditionally had to wait. Yes, pass rushers traditionally have to wait, as do offensive linemen. So we'll see. I mean, who knows if the selectors will say, okay, Torrey Holt has finally waited long enough. There's a window to get him in. So it all depends on not the greatness of the player, so to speak, but who's going in, because there's only 5 slots open. So, again, I don't know. Yanda and Suggs are absolutely deserving to be immortalized in Canton. To say their first ballot, I just don't know how the selectors are going to go with that.
I understand that. I completely get it. Steve, what else can I plug for you, sir?
I will be with the Detroit Lions tomorrow on Inside Training Camp before I do head to Canton. But, that's about it, unless, you got some people out there plugging and want to buy me dinner or something.
Hey, man, if you didn't stick around. You're not still in town today, are you? Did you stick around? Because there might be.
I am getting ready to leave. I tell you what, I went to Jerry's Seafood in Bowie to get a crab bomb, which is the greatest invention recipe ever. Every time I come to the DMV, I have to go by Jerry's Seafood and get a crab bomb.
Wow, that's a haul from Owings Mills too. You really wanted it. You really were.
Oh man, hey, I get them shipped out to Los Angeles where I live.
Wow, that is commitment.
That's how good they are.
At Wyche89 on Twitter, and as you mentioned, Inside Training Camp every day starting at noon on NFL Network. Steve Wyche, really appreciate you taking the time for us this morning, man. Thanks so much for doing this.
I appreciate you having me.
Steve Wyche with us here on GCR after he was at camp yesterday. Yeah, it's a very good Pro Football Hall of Fame class this year, but not terribly relevant to any of us. I believe it's Saturday is the induction ceremony. But, just not, no one that we're all that worked up about here locally. It's Dwight Freeney. It's, I guess Devin Hester was technically a Raven for a moment. Like he had a cup of coffee in Baltimore. So there is technically a former Baltimore Raven who's going into the Hall of Fame. Andre Johnson, Julius Peppers, Patrick Willis, and then Randy Gradishar, Steve McMichael are going in this year as well. It's a very good group. But next year is really relevant, again, in Baltimore. And as Steve was talking about some of the holdovers, and then Luke Kuechly, then there's this really polarizing conversation about Eli Manning because he did win 2 Super Bowls, right? But otherwise, outside of winning 2 Super Bowls, there's nothing about Eli Manning that says he's a Hall of Famer. Nothing. 0. But a lot of people think he's going to get in because of those 2 Super Bowls, and particularly because he won those 2 Super Bowls in New York, right? Like, that's the media capital of the world. So, I don't know. I really don't. I don't have the answer as to what it means for Terrell Suggs and Marshall Yanda. I feel like Suggs is more likely because getting quarterbacks on the ground, that statistic is a little bit heavier. I think that gives him a good chance of getting in on the first ballot, but not even a guarantee. As I said before, there have been a lot of guys that had triple-digit sacks that didn't get in quickly or some that didn't get in at all. Terrell Suggs is going to get in, but will it be the first year? Don't know. Marshall Yanda, I think, should get in, and I think ultimately will. I'd be almost stunned if Marshall Yanda got in on the first ballot next year. Today's show also brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Sports and social inside Live Casino and Hotel is always the best place to watch all of the big events, including what's going on over in Paris right now. And right now, Live Casino Rewards members have the opportunity to earn discounts on cash and credit purchases at the casino. Join the Live Casino Rewards Club online or in person at Live today. See complete details at livecasinohotel.com. All right. Let's get back to baseball. Obviously, 6 o'clock. The trade deadline is coming up. What will the Orioles do? What should the Orioles do? Our buddy Dan Szymborski from Fangraphs and ESPN is back with us this morning here on GCR. Dan, it's Glenn. It's good to chat with you as always. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm getting a little tired, but that's kind of normal during the trade deadline.
Right, a lot going on, a lot to react to. What's been the most, so far of what's happened, what's been the one to you that has been maybe the most impactful as far as who might win the World Series this year?
Well, we're actually pretty short on blockbusters so
Right.
far. We've had some good moderate trades. I actually think Zach Eflin, I'm not just saying that because I'm an Orioles fan and we're talking Baltimore Orioles. I actually think Zach Eflin's probably the most impactful acquisition so far in the short term. I know some people, really like Isaac Paredes, and I do too, but I'm not sure he's necessarily quite as impactful given where the Cubs are and how much of an improvement he represents over what they currently have. So we don't have the big trades yet, and we might not get the big trades for various reasons.
Yeah, it's starting to look like Garrett Crochet doesn't get dealt. It's starting to look like Tarek Skubal doesn't get dealt. I guess let me just hypothetically, let's engage on that. If you're the Orioles, knowing the price it would take to get those two guys, Crochet with the obvious questions of, is he willing to pitch out of the bullpen? Is he willing? I know that sometimes you can say those things and it's just bluster. Is the price worth it to get either of those two top pitchers that look more and more like they're not going to get dealt?
It obviously depends on what that price is, and it's not going to be cheap. When you talk about the Tigers and Skubal, like you say, would Skubal be worth giving up Jackson Holiday?
Right.
I think if it's a straight up trade, yeah, maybe that's something you really consider strongly, given the Orioles' strength and Skubal's clear abilities. But when they start saying, hey, we want Jackson Holiday and throw in Kobe Mayo and Connor Norby and maybe a picture or two, then you say, yeah, no, new phone, who's this?
Right.
So there's always a price that any player is tradable, and a price any player is a good acquisition. And of course, Crochet, even if it is bluster, it increases the risk of that because you're betting on it being bluster. And that's an additional complication. And there are already some concerns about Crochet's just risk level because he's thrown the most innings he ever has. He hasn't been healthy for a couple of seasons. Skubal, of course, is removed from injury too, but a little longer. He's been a little more durable. So there are real risks to bringing in Crochet, and any return has to reflect that. And I don't know if the teams that have those players would be willing to seriously understand that a reduced package reflects the risk.
So of the pitchers, let's start with the starting pitchers that are still out there. I will admit to you, I was a Fetty guy, and I was really bummed, and especially when I saw that. I'm like, I feel like the Orioles could have paid that price for Eric Fetty. But then you see the price for Yusei Kikuchi, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Of the pitchers,
yeah, I'm not sure about the Kikuchi trade.
Dude, it's mind-blowing. It really makes me wonder, how do you trade for a pitcher now? And thankfully the Orioles got Eflin, so at least they did something. But I think we all would agree they probably still need one more because I don't know how you would trust Dean Kramer in a playoff spot at this point. Is there someone out there that you still think, based on what the price would likely be, again, unless Yusei Kikuchi has ruined the entire pitching market at this point, would be worth it for the Orioles between now and 6?
I think what it comes down to is a lot of the pitchers who are interesting are simply off the market now. Because obviously Crochet and Skubal were the most interesting.
Right.
Eflin, I think, the thing is, Eflin was such a nice acquisition because, the Orioles gave up a real prospect, but I don't think the Orioles gave up any prospect that they're going to think, oh my God, it's going to come back and haunt us in 3 years. I think there's kind of a weird issue that probably the most interesting pitcher available by far is Jack Flaherty, but I can't see the Orioles doing, a Flaherty rerun as good as he's been this year. It just feels a little weird, I guess. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm being too dismissive. But there's just not a lot out there. I think that you don't really have that many teams who are selling right now. And I think that's why you see teams like the Rays and the Cubs kind of jump in, even though they both still have theoretical playoff chances.
What about Tyler Anderson?
Tyler Anderson, the thing is, he has a good ERA this year. His peripherals are not great. He doesn't have a great history. I mean, how much more do you trust him than Dean Kramer? Now, if you're doing a trade with the Angels, I actually like Reed Detmers better than Tyler Anderson.
Everybody keeps talking about Reed Detmers. That's so funny to me.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know you guys were. But his peripherals are so much better than his numbers. He does have a good history. A relatively good history. I think you get Detmers for less than Tyler Anderson, and he's a guy who could contribute long term. But you show me Tyler Anderson, and I'm not really that much more comfortable with Anderson as the fourth starter in a playoff rotation than I am Dean Kramer when it comes down to it. So I don't want to pay through the nose for that to happen.
I know. I completely understand it. I guess should we talk about Quantrill at all, or is that meh to you?
I guess it's also in the category of meh. I mean, He has survived well in Colorado, and that's a plus. But I just don't see him as that much of an upgrade. Eflin was a real upgrade, and I would hate to deal with the Rockies. The Rockies never quite seem to have a connection between their players and how much those players are worth. I remember I guess it was a decade ago now, when they were insisting on to rent Jorge De La Rosa for a few months, that they wanted Kevin Gausman, which would have been an absolutely ridiculous trade to make at the time.
Chatting with Dan Szymborski, Fangraphs and ESPN with us here on GCR. Dan, I think I know the answer to the question, but let's just engage me anyway. Can you win a World Series with Craig Kimbrel as your closer in 2024?
I think you can. I think you want to be very careful with Craig Kimbrel because he always goes through these 6 week. I mean, he alternates, I think, almost between like 2 months where he's just dominating, like, okay, Craig Kimbrel from the Braves is back. And then he goes through these 6 week periods where, like, dear God, please stop pitching Craig Kimbrel in any high leverage situation. I think that I would probably use Sir Anthony Dominguez in higher leverage roles over Craig Kimbrel. That's, of course, the Orioles' problem to bear, not necessarily mine. But I think you have to be very careful with Kimbrel.
So if by the way, I think it's kind of you're saying. I feel like the answer is no to me at this point. That like what you're saying, the same things you're saying are why the answer is like I just can't be confident that he's going to be on when you get to the playoffs. Like there's no way that I can have that confidence. But I ask it this to say, I don't know how many options there still are for like definitive upgrades. Is it worth paying a real price to rent a Tanner Scott back at this point?
It depends, of course, on the price. I'm not privy to the Marlins conversations. If you give up players who don't cripple you long term, then it is. But you can manage your bullpen in the playoffs. Remember the Nationals in 2019, which seems like almost like a decade ago post-COVID. They kind of went to the playoffs with 2 relievers they could count on and kind of juggled them for the whole month, and fairly successfully too. The Orioles, I mean, have a good chance of getting the good Kimbrel, but I think they have to be realistic that if they get the bad Kimbrel in the playoffs, they need to immediately kind of get him into those lower leverage situations rather than just wait it out, because that always seems to backfire with him.
I hear all of this and I'm like, yeah, I just don't know how I'm going to trust it. I don't know how I'm going to trust any of that. But we'll see if they don't acquire I don't know what they're going to do if they don't acquire a closer. I guess Cano could still be in the conversation at this point. Let me try to pose it more generically, right? Dan, if the Orioles don't do anything of significance to the point they've already done something in Zach Eflin, and you could say to some extent Sir Anthony Dominguez can be a significant acquisition. If they don't do anything else of significance between now and 6 o'clock, are they good enough to win the World Series as is?
I think so. I mean, obviously, generically, any team that makes the playoffs is a good bet to win the World Series, relatively speaking. We look at last year, the Texas Rangers and the Arizona Diamondbacks were not the 2 best teams in baseball, or even top 3 in their leagues by any rational thought. But you get to the playoffs, you take your chances. I don't think the Orioles bullpen is that bad, and I think that Eflin does kind of fix one of their playoff questions. because in the playoffs there's a disproportional amount of value to your top three starters or so. Now I think that the Orioles with Eflin do have those top three starters, and the fourth is a question, but it's not quite as crucial a question. Everyone's kind of slid down a slot in the order. Now Kramer won't be the number 3 starter.
And this is all about that we have to say, provided everybody stays healthy, which is still part of the the equation that I'm doing. Like I hear what you're saying, but there's still a part of me that says, right, until you lose someone else, and then you're right back to square one, which is why I was inclined for them to acquire 2 starters, because I want to build in for that risk.
Yeah, that's the danger. That's the adventure of employing pitchers.
Right? I mean, it's the nature of where we are at this point. Like, how can I not be concerned about that in baseball?
No, obviously it's preferable if the right trade is out there, but I do think that they can win the World Series with this roster, and I don't think they're notably inferior in the playoffs compared to the regular season, compared to any other team. Because I think you look at a lot of the contenders, they have these same kinds of worries. The Astros certainly do. The Yankees certainly do. Maybe not the Dodgers, because they always employ like 13 live arms in the hope that 5 of them are healthy at any given point. But I mean, even the Brewers, they're going to probably make the playoffs, and they have some real depth concerns. I mean, their rotation is basically a 3-man rotation of when you're talking guys you like right now. So I don't think the Orioles are necessarily worse off, and I think, they're going to have to take their chances at some point, because you can't, give the whole. You're not going to send Kobe Mayo out for Tyler Anderson, or you're probably going to have tougher decisions to make in the future. Let's just say.
All right. Before I let you go, and I really appreciate the time, the other side of things, we've already seen them deal Austin Hayes. There has been conversation about the possibility of them also moving Ryan Mountcastle and or Cedric Mullins. My gut tells me that after moving Hayes, I don't think that I don't love the idea of them moving Mullins in season. Like, I understand the math is he's not going to be around long term. He struggled this year. I get all of that. But we've seen Heston Kjerstad play left field. I don't like the idea, particularly in Baltimore, the idea of square peg round holing it in left field just doesn't work to me. And Colton Cowser playing left field is a good idea. I am inclined to not move Cedric Mullins. But the Mountcastle one to me is actually fascinating because it feels like his numbers have been good enough that he might have some value, and there is a serious redundancy problem that the Orioles are facing. If they don't trade away Kobe Mayo, even in a world if Anthony Santander is gone next season, you're still talking about Kjerstad and Mayo and O'Hearn. And Adley Rutschman has to DH a certain amount of times. The redundancy factor to me is real. I'm oddly maybe a little bit more inclined to listen on trade possibilities for Ryan Mountcastle if they were to exist today.
I think that the Christian Pache trade in part was to kind of give the Orioles more options in center field should Mullins be traded. I mean, it was a lot more than that, but I don't like that option. I can't escape that, Dan. He doesn't hit at all. I can't justify Christian Pache's regular season roster spot because he can't be the right side of the platoon. He doesn't hit left-handers. It's very difficult for me having the Christian Pache conversation. Sure. Let's just say his major league performance has been underwhelming so far. Yeah. But he does provide options. And the thing is, one of the things that made the Phillies trade possible, that brought in Dominguez, the reliever that the Orioles needed, was that when you are able to trade players who can contribute now, which Austin Hayes can, that kind of expands the teams you can trade with. If you're only trading the teams who are dead in the water, you're going to have to give prospects up. But when you have actual major leaguers you can trade, then all of a sudden you can make mutually beneficial trades with contenders. And the question is, do you dislike the center field downgrade as much if it brought in a pitcher that you like a lot more for the postseason? Because no, Pache hasn't hit in the minors the majors this year, or any time except 2023. Mullins until recently hasn't been that great this season either. It's just it comes down to what's available and what the priority is.
I can't make those equals, right? Like they're nowhere. Pache has no track record. He has 51 at bats where he kind of hit lefties last year. Like that's everything he's ever done. Cedric Mullins, I get it, has been disappointing, but to your point, he has been hitting again of late and is an extraordinary center fielder range-wise, like extraordinary. I can't equate this in any way. I can't justify a Pache roster spot. And the Cedric Mullins thing is too painful to me right now. I get it. They're going to do it. He's not going to be around long term. But it's too painful for me at the moment when it requires somebody – like Colton Cowser can play center field. I'm good with that. But somebody has to play left field in a place that's now one of the most difficult places to play left field in all of baseball. They don't have that guy. Like, short of them committing, I guess, to Kyle Stowers playing every day, which seems wild considering they won't even give him a spot on the roster. Like, that is a really dramatic thing for a Major League Baseball team to do, is just say, well, we'll hope for the best and continue to stick someone out there who can't play the position. Like, that's bold for me, Dan.
Hey, well, I mean, fortune favors the bold, so that's
okay.
if we're going to go through savings. But I think there's actually a chance that in such a trade that you would see a lot more Cowser in center field.
Right.
He hasn't been terrible in.
No. I think Cowser can play center field. I'm good with Cowser in center field. The problem is somebody still has to play left, right? Like, I'm completely on board with Cowser being capable. And if you had a left fielder, I would probably have a different conversation about this. But you don't. Like, there just isn't another option for left field that you would feel even remotely comfortable with.
I mean, I suspect that the Orioles are more comfortable than you are, clearly, with a Kjerstad, Cowser, Santander outfield. I think that if they could get what they want in return, that might be worth the cost.
Boy.
I mean, I'm not saying do this for Tyler Anderson.
Right. Well, I don't even know. I can't think. I don't think the Angels would be the team that would be looking for Cedric Mullins, right? Like, I'm not. Boy, everything about this is very perilous to me. Before I had watched Heston Kjerstad play left field, there was a part of me that was like, yeah, get that bat in the lineup. Do whatever it takes. And then I watched him play left field, and I was like, oh, my God. No, you can't do this. You got to. If you want to move somebody, you have to move Mountcastle because you got way too many of those cats. You have way too many corner outfielder in first base DH types. You don't have enough actual outfielders, and that's the part of the conversation that I'm struggling with significantly until someone proves otherwise. We will have to agree to disagree on this one and see what it is the Orioles do. Dan, what can I plug for you, man?
Well, we're doing lots of trade deadline stuff at Fangraphs.com. This actually tends to be our two busiest days of the year, and since it doesn't look like the site has crashed, we always welcome more people to come check us out and maybe become a subscriber that removes all the ads and supports, 13 full-time employees. That's pretty much my plug.
I know it's at D Szymborski is on Twitter, but did I see that you have another Twitter account?
I have one called, I think, Baseball Zim that I use when Twitter sometimes locks me out and doesn't accept my password. That's like my emergency Twitter account, because there was a period where Twitter would not let me in, and I was talking to their sore excuse for customer service, and they did not accept I was, and so I wasn't trying to get my Twitter account back. That's the Twitter. That's part of the Twitter adventure.
I have a lot of comments about that, but I'll save them for another time because you never know who's listening. Dan, always appreciate it, man. Thanks for hopping on with us this morning. It's Dan Szymborski from Fangraphs and ESPN. Look, man, I can 100% be wrong. Glenn Clark, guy who's been wrong a lot in the past and will be wrong a lot in the future. That's me. Hi, I'm Glenn Clark. If the Orioles move Cedric Mullins today and end up playing Heston Kjerstad more regularly in left field, maybe Heston Kjerstad will prove at some point that he can play left field. And I know the argument has been made that at some point you got to value the bats more than you value the fine. And again, part of that is Heston Kjerstad for a week was really hitting, and that's obviously cooled down a little bit. I keep coming back to, if this were a bad team, go for it. But they're not. And the world in which I am committing to Heston Kjerstad as an everyday left fielder is not one I can stomach. And it's also complicated by Cedric Mullins is hitting again. He's not a zero at the plate. I can't make these things equate. I can't do it. I don't know how much of an offensive upgrade it is for your lineup to have Heston Kjerstad in it every day versus your lineup having Cedric Mullins in it every day. I don't know. I think one day that might be true, but I don't know today what the actual upgrade is to the lineup at large. I am not just making that trade for the sake of making that trade. It is not happening to me. Not now. Again, maybe in the offseason when you get a bigger picture look at who you have and try to figure out, I'm not doing that. And trying to find, maybe if you don't trade away Heston Kjerstad, trying to find some more reps for him in left field, I'm listening to that. But committing to Heston Kjerstad as being your regular left fielder is no. No. Not right now. Can't do it. Don't know that I'll ever be comfortable with the idea of it. You saw how much it helped to have Colton Cowser in left field yesterday. That's what I'm looking for today. Again, we can talk about it in the offseason. It does look more and more like Colton Cowser is going to be this team's center fielder. At this point, it might even be to me by the start of next season. But doing it today for the sake of doing it is just not something that I'm interested in. And I'm not even really, when I bring up the Mountcastle thing, I'm not even really saying that doing, and every time we bring up Christian Pache, I don't know what are we talking about? Because again, saying I'm okay with him being on the roster because I want him for the playoffs because he can be a pinch runner and a defensive replacement. Fine. But talking about him like he's part of a solution for outfield playing time is bat ass. There is nothing that warrants that. Zero. We are doing it for our own edification. There is absolutely nothing that warrants the idea of Christian Pache being part of the equation in the outfield. You essentially have to say, it's almost like constructing a football roster. We have to list this guy as a wide receiver, but we all know the reason why he's on the team is because he's going to be a returner. That's the way that I would be talking about Christian Pache. If he stays on the roster, and as I've said a few times, I would prefer to do better, but I get it. The options are dwindling for your ability to do better. If he stays on the roster, and the reporting has been that the Orioles are not committed to him staying on the roster, but if he stays on the roster, it's create a new page on the roster and just call it pinch runner / defensive replacement. Like the idea of including Christian Pache's name in the conversation about the outfield picture is bat ass. There is nothing that he does that would warrant that. Again, the argument that people will make is, well, he might not hit, lefties well, but he does hit them better than Cedric Mullins. Fine, but you can Colton Cowser hits them better than Cedric Mullins. And frankly, about as well as Christian Pache does. Just play Colton Cowser in those circumstances and maybe bring up Kobe Mayo. If you don't care about defense in left field, then let Kobe Mayo run around in left field. If that's where we're at. That's very difficult for me when we have this conversation because it just feels like we're accepting things and just saying them and not actually using a skeptical eye or really considering the realities of it. Now, if they do it, can I say there's a 0 chance that it works? Of course not. Things can change. Heston Kjerstad can get better defensively. Christian Pache might be able to find the thing that worked for 50 at-bats last year where he was decent at hitting. Like, it's possible. Anything is possible. But I can't make decisions based on those possibilities. All right. When we come back in, we'll get a tidbit. We'll get tubular. We will wind down for a Tuesday episode of GCR. Don't forget, today's show also brought to you by County Sports Zone. County Sports Zone is getting you ramped up for high school football season. It's just around the corner, about less than a month, I guess, at this point, away from the start of high school football, and they are getting you ready for it. Content daily. CountySports.zone, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. It's GCR.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their legendary fat, delicious, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. It's crab season, so sit back and crack some crabs while watching the Birds pursue another divisional title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday night, the Costas Inn offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30. So head on down to the Costas Inn today at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Discover one of Baltimore's hidden gems at Guilford Hall Brewery. Enjoy dinner in our spacious brew pub, sip a signature cocktail in our outdoor, dog-friendly beer garden, or take a tour of our brewery. Discover your new favorite local craft beer. From crisp lagers to hoppy ales, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Pair your brew with delicious appetizers and entrees. There are options for the whole family, but you have to try our fan-favorite giant pretzel. Guilford Hall Brewery, where every sip is a celebration. Visit us online at guilfordhall.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin, and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
There he is, Agent 00 Chicken. Nothing can keep him from Royal Farms Chicken Palooza. Because right now, he can get a 3-piece world-famous chicken box for just $8 with a portion of each sale donated to a local charity. Plus, register to win world-famous chicken for a year. Come to Royal Farms Chicken Palooza. It's a real thriller, but it's only for a limited time. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now, and on the cover, Glenn Clark and Stan the Fan Charles sit down for a sports conversation with Maryland Governor Wes Moore, discussing the Orioles and Ravens stadium leases, the future of horse racing in Maryland, and how his own football career at Johns Hopkins shaped him as a leader. This is also our annual travel issue with information about sports tourism opportunities in Maryland for your family to take advantage of throughout the summer. Press Box is available for free at over 500 locations throughout the region, including 60 Royal Farm stores, or you can read the entire issue at PressBoxOnline.com, where you can find great betting advice and the best daily coverage of the O's, Ravens, and Terps.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
All right, back in here on GCR as we continue along on a Tuesday edition of the program. Just want to, some of you that have checked in during the course of the show today, David was responding to Dan Szymborski. Zach Evelyn is not a top 3 starter. What is this guy smoking? He's another Dean Kramer. And Mike responded, well, he was top 8 in Cy Young. Ideally, he's our 4, but you can do worse as a 3. I feel like that's kind of closer to where I am. It's like I said at the beginning of the show. We have to acknowledge he was bad yesterday. Again, with things to like. That's sort of the makeup of a number 4 starter. To the point The bar is low here. This is a low bar that we're talking about. Teams have started worse starters than Zach Eflin as their number 3 starter in a playoff series. That has happened. A lot. I think there's things to like about Zach Eflin, and as a middle-of-the-rotation guy, I'm okay with Zach Eflin, to the point it's why all of us are still interested in the starting pitcher market. We would like to do better than Zach Eflin, and add into that, at the moment, he'd be your number 2 starter next year. Now, you have lots of time to address that, whether it's bringing someone back, like, Corbin Burns, or trying to acquire someone else via trade or in free agency this offseason. That becomes more concerning. Zach Eflin was better a year ago than he's been this year. The strikeout numbers were higher a year ago than they were this year. I'm okay with the Zach Eflin move, and I'm okay with the idea that he might have to start in the playoffs. But do I want to do better than that? Yeah, I do. Absolutely. I want to do better than Zach Eflin. That's where I'm at. And to say that other teams have better number 3 starters, they do. Yes, 100%. Your offense is going to have to beat those guys. And I get why that's trepidatious at the moment. But what I like, yes, 1,000%. I'd like to do better than Zach Eflin as my number 3 starter. I just don't know at the cost that what's going to happen in order to be able to do that. That's where I'm at. I think we're good. Let's go ahead and let's get a tidbit.
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
All right, what you got for tidbit today, Grant?
Well, we know the White Sox are kind of going through their thing right now with their losing streak, and I don't want to remember.
Did they play yesterday? I don't know. Did they get up to 14, or are they still at 13?
Pretty sure they lost yesterday. That's why I last saw it was 14.
Okay, then it's 14. Yeah.
But we, of course, remember when the Orioles had their little losing streak. Was it 3 years ago? We reached 19 losses.
Mm-hmm.
I have the game pulled up where they beat Shohei Ohtani and the Angels.
Is that what ended the streak?
Yep, they won 10-6. Can you name me the starting lineup from that night's game and who started on the mound?
No, but we'll give it a shot.
Well, I'll
was Anthony Santander in that lineup?
Batted fourth and right.
Okay.
A lot of them are still on, a good few of them are still on the team.
Hang on, let's see. Batted fourth and right. Was Cedric Mullins in that lineup?
He was the leadoff hitter. He homered against Ohtani.
Well, how about that? Mullins center field. Was Austin Hayes in that lineup?
No, he didn't start, but he pinched hit later on. I almost said who, but I gotta let you guess.
Was Ryan Mountcastle in that lineup?
He DH'd, batted second, 0 for 4, but a walk.
Okay. Yikes. 2019. So Jonathan VR was in that lineup.
No, this is 2021, so VR was gone.
Oh, this
is
2021?
Yeah.
Why did I thought you...
Did I say 2019?
Oh, I don't know why I did 2019. Okay, you did say 3 years. You're right. It was 2021. You're good. Okay, 2021. I was working with 2019. 2021, so that... Oh, God. Okay, no, that would have been... well, Trey Mancini, right?
He was. 1 for 5 at first base, batting third. The lower the lineup gets trickier.
How about a Renato Nunez or a Rio Ruiz?
Both of them were gone at that point. You've got this, Glenn.
Was Pedro Severino the catcher?
He came in later on and caught.
It wasn't Chirinos.
Oh, I thought you were about to say it.
Was Chance Cisco?
He was gone at that point, too.
Austin Wins?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's who Hayes pinch hit for later on.
Where did he bat in the lineup?
Wins was 9th, and that's when Hayes came in later on and pinch hit for him. Hayes got a 2 RBI double.
So in the infield, could that have been yuck? I mean, God.
Well, at shortstop, we kind of went on our rant about him yesterday.
A rant about? Was that Beckham? He was in 2021, yeah. Who did we talk about yesterday? Shortstop. That we ran on a rant about?
Yeah, we weren't too happy about how he played this week.
Oh, Ramon Arias played shortstop?
That's why I was saying yesterday.
Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah.
All right, where was he in the lineup?
He batted 6th.
All right, so we need a second baseman, a third baseman, and a left fielder. Second baseman, a third baseman, and a left fielder. And it wasn't Austin Hayes, so was it Ryan McKenna?
No, he didn't play that game.
Was it Stevie
Wilkerson?
Yeah.
No.
Was it?
I think Wilkerson was released at that point.
Dude, you're asking me to remember the 2021 Orioles. There's zero chance. None.
How can I help?
Largely tapped out. Pat Valleca, did I guess him?
No, he's not there.
I don't even remember who the options are. Another. Was that? Oh, what was the guy, the Yankee, Jemai Jones?
Yeah, he batted 7th at second base.
Third baseman and a left fielder. Tyler Nevin.
No.
Taron Vavra.
No, he hadn't made his debut yet.
Sure.
All right, now I feel bad.
I'm just trying to think of anybody else who was on that team. DJ Stewart?
You got one.
Left field, was he a left fielder?
He had 2 RBIs that game.
Was he 5th in the order?
Yeah, about a 5th.
How about that?
And then
DJ
Severino
Stewart,
came in later on.
So,
just
the
third
baseman. The third baseman was. I don't know. The third baseman was.
Do you want me to give it?
Give me a hint.
First name Kelvin.
Oh, well, it was Kelvin Gutierrez. The first name wasn't good. I only vaguely remember Kelvin Gutierrez.
He didn't play that many games with us.
Kelvin Gutierrez.
Do you want to give a shot at the starting pitcher
or? John Means.
No, it wasn't Means.
Matt Harvey.
No, that's a good guess though.
How about
another guy that had
Bruce Zimmerman?
No, it's another guy that had a few game sample size. So that's why I said it's going to be tough.
Few game sample size.
But he was actually pretty good in those few games for him that year.
Austin Voth?
No, not yet.
Asher Wojciechowski?
No. But I do remember that name, though.
Jimmy Yacobonis?
No. Another name that I remember.
Spencer Watkins? Mike Wright? What the hell? Where are we?
Do you want help? Look, the next tidbit I have is a little bit easier for you.
Give me a hint.
First name Chris.
I got nothing.
Ellis.
I don't.
Chris Ellis.
That's.
I know.
I'm not convinced that's a real person. I'm not.
3 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs, no walks.
I don't think I believe you that that's real. Chris Ellis?
Yep.
I don't remember anything about Chris Ellis. Yeah. Chris Ellis. I'm going to feel terrible when I find out he was a guest on the show. Chris Ellis apparently pitched for a lot at the Royals, the Rays, and then he ended up in Baltimore in 2020 and 2022. He was still the hell? Oh, he wasn't on the team. He was in the okay. On August 20th, Ellis was claimed off of waivers by the Baltimore Orioles. He posted a 2.49 ERA and 6 starts for Baltimore, striking out 16 and 25 in a third innings work. He was outrighted off the 40-man roster, elected free agency. The Orioles re-signed the Ellis to a minor league contract. I got nothing. Absolute blind spot, 0 on the existence of a Chris Ellis. I am still not convinced that is a real person. All right, let's go ahead and get Tubular.
There is a place where tradition, family, and community gather, where the aspirations of talented young competitors takes root, and where the crossroads of history, culture, and renewal come together. This spring, experience America's newest and most innovative ballpark, Meritus Park in Hagerstown, Maryland, home of the Atlantic League Flying Boxcars. Plan your getaway today. You're welcome in Hagerstown, Maryland.
Yeah, you don't have to turn off my microphone when you do that. So I know not to talk over the commercial. I promise you. Don't just go ahead and leave that up. All right. Here's what's coming up tonight. Totally Tubular. As I mentioned, the Orioles and Blue Jays will play another game in their 4-game set. And tonight it's Corbin Burns scheduled to pitch against Chris Bassett on Masson at 6:35. The Olympics continue on all of the NBC networks. The U.S. women's rugby team, unfortunately, is playing for the bronze against Australia at 1 o'clock after they lost got up 5-0. Everything was looking good against New Zealand. Then it all went to hell very, very quickly in the semifinals. So they'll play for the bronze this afternoon. That is on E at 1 o'clock. Other highlights right now, I can't get into 3-on-3 basketball. I just can't. I'm just not certain that it needs to be an Olympic sport, to be honest with you.
That's a thing?
Yep, that's an Olympic sport, 3-on-3 basketball.
Okay.
But the U.S. Women are playing Germany right now in that. The men will play Serbia later on today at 4:15. Men's soccer plays Guinea at 1 o'clock on USA. The 3-on-3 basketball is on NBC. There's a USA-Netherlands men's beach volleyball at 2 o'clock on E after the rugby. And that's about it. Tennis. Right now, the team of Rafael Nadal and Carlos Alcaraz are in action, so you can check that out. Coco Gauff, a loser today at the Olympics. So the only American woman left at the Olympics is Danielle Collins. The other baseball today, Masson 2, Nationals, Diamondbacks, 9:40. That's also on ESPN Plus nationally. TBS, Yankees, Phillies at 6:40. MLB Network, Dodgers, Padres at 9:40. The basketball tournament semifinals tonight on Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. And that's about it. Some soccer, a new episode of The Ultimate Fighter at 10 o'clock on ESPN, WWE NXT at 8 o'clock on Sci-Fi. All right, that'll do it for today. Don't forget that Rita and I will be with you tonight. No, actually, it's just me. Take it back. No Rita. I'll be with you tonight, 6:30 to 9 over on 105.7 The Fan. Rita will check in with me, and we will discuss what the Orioles do or do not do at the deadline, and then some other stuff that we'll be doing tonight, 6:30 to 9 over on 105.7 The Fan. Then we'll be back over here tomorrow with Stuff and Things. I have no idea what's coming up on the program tomorrow. But thanks today to Dan Szymborski. Thanks also to Steve Wyche, as well as to Ken Weinman. We'll get all that up in the greatest hits section of the
Oh, my God.
It's So Good tab. Yeah, you got to say, oh, my. You got to do that and then say, It's So Good tab at Glenn Clark Radio. Or just It's So Good, and then I'll say tab at glennclarkradio.com. All good.
Look, that's a new one.
Well, no, he always said, oh, my God, it's so good. You got to just still say that part of it. So, oh, my God, it's so good. And then I say tab at glennclarkradio.com. Thanks today to everybody at PressBox, all of our great sponsors and partners, including Easy Pass, Ocean City, Live Casino and Hotel. Visit Hagerstown in Washington County. Cruise, Maryland, Guilford Hall Brewery, Royal Farms, the Block Courage Awards. HelpMyGamblingProblem.org, the Costas Inn, MSA, the Baltimore Orioles, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Thanks to Grant. Remind me on Instagram.
20G DeVivo.
Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great